And welcome back into Open Line. We're so glad that you've been spending part of your evening with us here on the show. Great calls this evening. I tell you what, so many good calls about so many different things, and Kevin's able to offer great advice on all of those, so everybody benefits. If you do have it, we have one segment left. Get on the phone with us as quickly as possible. We want to try to get to as many as we can in this segment. We're going back to the lines right now. Mike is on the line with us. Mike, we're glad that you're here on Open Line. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
I have a question for him.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you. I have a question regarding COVID and workers' rights. I drive a school bus here in Wilson County, and we receive an annual bonus based on attendance. For those of us that have had COVID and are out for more than a week, we are going to lose our entire bonus. And I just wanted to know if there was any maybe federal mandated legislation that would protect workers from being penalized monetarily for having COVID.
Okay, Mike, you're walking in uncharted waters. What does that really mean? It means no one really knows. But if I were in your spot, I'd get my fellow men together and try to make a claim at Human Resource and say, guys, this is not fair. Let's just try to be fair to one another. The real world is bus drivers are an important part of our school system. They're hard to get, responsible ones. So you're a very valuable resource, and I would have to advance my cause and say, guys, this was thrust on us. Why don't you make an exception and get this worked out at the local level? I don't always go with the federal laws because it costs so much to go into federal court. But for the man who just keeps pushing, remember, the battle's not always won by the stronger, faster man, but sooner or later, it'll be won by a man who thinks he can. I teach you to go hard, rally your people together, go see that Human Resources and lay your case out. Makes good sense. If I was in command, I'd try to help you. Thank you, Mike, for calling.
All right, hope that helps, Mike. We're glad that you were watching this evening, and we're going back to our lines right now. Stuart, you are on the line with us. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes, I called a moment ago, and
Sure.
Thank you for the advice on that. Just what are legal wills in Tennessee? If you would just touch on that for me, and I'll hang up and listen because listening on the phone is breaking up some. So, all right, thank you.
All right, Stuart, thank you for calling back in again. In the state of Tennessee, you're going to be surprised. We have people come in all the time, and they said, Mr. Kennedy, I've got the will. Now, I got it off the internet. It was a form, but it doesn't qualify in Tennessee because you have to execute it properly for it to be valid. You have to have 2 independent witnesses over here, and it has to be notarized. Now, we do have a holographic will in Tennessee that's recognized, but it's a little more complicated. What is a holographic will? Where you sit down and you just write up in your own handwriting and signed by you. And if there were a real bad circumstance and there was no time, I might even consider doing that myself, because you can revoke all prior wills with just a piece of yellow paper. You know, one of the tricks that I've learned over the years is get people to sign even a piece of yellow paper. I learned that from a judge. He called me out one time and he said, Mr. Kennedy, have your client sign that. I said, but Your Honor, we don't have a place typed for his name. He said, Mr. Kennedy, have your client sign. And so we signed, and he called me back in chambers. I was a real young. He said, always have your client sign because that'll stop a lot of misunderstandings. So that's why it doesn't cost much to have a will done by a lawyer, relatively inexpensive. Don't go down. You know, they want to talk about all these forms that we can use for powers of it. But what do you do when no one recognizes it? You're better off not to have done that. So I always encourage everybody, get a will. It'll help solve your family. No one wants their children fighting with each other. And, you know, in my years of experience, they had to fight at the funeral home. They were fighting because part of the family were cleaning the house out while we were doing the funeral services. And so then they all end up at the Kennedy Law Firm ready to sue one another. Take those steps, make the plan, get a lawyer, get the will done, and keep it in a secure place. That's the proper way to do it, and it'll save you so much grief. God bless you, and thank you for asking that question.
And we do appreciate Stuart calling in this evening. Kevin, you know, on that, as far as someone getting a will, what's your recommendation? So I know some people think, well, I can, like you say, I can just find one online and I can just fill it out and then I've got my will. What do you advise, though, as far as is that first step?
I say don't do that. Because in Tennessee, we have to, as a lawyer, we have to go in and say, Chuck, do you have your right mind? Chuck's going to say, as good as I ever had it. And then I'm going to say, Chuck, do you know who your family is? What is your issue? That means, who do we have? Do you have children? And if he can tell me who his children, if Chuck says, I can't tell you, then there's a question about his mental stability. That's why we do this formal execution. That's why we have two witnesses, to let it be known that you are Chuck Long. You do have your mind. You know the extent of your property, and you know the extent of your issues. Because why? It's public policy. We want your will to be honored, your wishes to be honored. That's why these laws are put into effect, to protect you and the heirs of your estate. So,
all right.
Yes, absolutely. Call that lawyer, get it done.
Absolutely. Okay, we are going to, I think we've got time for one more caller this evening. Michelle, we've got about 2 minutes left. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes, I have a question. I have a daughter that is 32, and they gave her the wrong medicine, and she need a kidney. We've been fighting this, and we can't find a lawyer to take her case, and it's painful.
Well, first off, I'm so sorry to hear about that circumstance, and it does happen. You can go to the pharmacy. They have people there that make mistakes just like you and I. There's always going to be human error. And as a result of that mistake, because they have a very high duty to take care of you, that's why we have schools of pharmacy. Degrees are required. And if they gave you a medicine and it destroyed a kidney, that's liability. What you're getting into, I don't know. We're going to have to find an expert that will say that medicine damaged that kidney to the extent that she lost the kidney. There's the gap. Can we find a medical doctor that will say that? Because you know the pharmaceutical companies will have all these experts say, no, even if you gave that, it would have been harmless. It would not have done. She had a pre-existing injury. Can y'all hear me? Everybody already knows what they're going to say before we even get into the court. So we need to find people who are going to support what really happened and tell the truth. Are they going to want money? All experts do. So you need to get hooked in with a group who can afford to do it. Is that justice? Well, it's just a fact of life. Some lawyers can afford to buy the experts and advance your cause. Some cannot. Well, I want my family to be taken care of, and that's some of the things I would entertain as I'm evaluating who to go to. And so keep going, keep looking. You'll see some lawyers that advertise. Google them. Look in here and see what the reviews are. When you get them on the phone, ask them about their track record with malpractice or pharmaceutical issues. God bless you and good luck to you.
That's right. Great advice there. I tell you what, Michelle, we're glad that you called in. Sorry you're having those problems. Kevin, we've got about a minute left. One of the things I've taken from you this evening, so many great things, but one of the ones is proactive better than reactive. Anytime, right?
Absolutely. We're going, you know, it's been said, Zig Ziglar, I'm a student of Zig Ziglar. I had a private conversation with him. And one of the things he said, when everybody's going to have problems, but Kevin, do you react to it or do you respond to it? Sophisticated men who are accomplished will respond to it. Cooler heads prevail. It doesn't do any good for you to run in and give them a cussing and raising cases. Cooler heads prevail. That's wisdom. And so that's what I would encourage all our listeners tonight, is to think coolly, evaluate, prepare. You know, you'll hear Kevin say, preparation, preparation, preparation. My son, the dentist, says prevention, prevention, prevention. And, you know, my realtor's called, he says location, location. So for tonight, always be prepared. Seek that legal advice. Get several opinions. Look after your family. That's why we have this brain. That's why we have this show, that we can share with one another and make a difference in our families and our friends' lives. God bless all of the callers that called in tonight. Thank you, Chuck. You're always great. Thanks so much.
I tell you what, always a pleasure. Kevin, we'll see you next time. We always appreciate it when you're here. When you come back, we're going to tell you how you can get a hold of the Kennedy Law Firm right after this.